Nestled amidst rolling hills and whispering willows lay Oak Hollow, a town untouched by the hurried pace of the world outside. Life in Oak Hollow moved at the pace of the seasons, each one marked by familiar rhythms. Spring brought blooming wildflowers and the sound of children's laughter echoing through the valley. Summer days were long and lazy, filled with the scent of freshly cut hay and the murmur of bees buzzing in the clover. Autumn painted the hillsides in vibrant hues of gold and crimson, as the townsfolk gathered for harvest festivals and shared stories around crackling bonfires. Winter arrived with a hush, blanketing the town in a serene silence, broken only by the crunch of snow underfoot and the quiet murmur of conversations by the fireplace. Life in Oak Hollow was simple, peaceful, and for the most part, uneventful. The townsfolk were a close-knit community, bound together by generations of shared history and a deep love for their little corner of the world. They worked hard, celebrated their joys together, and faced their challenges with a spirit of unity that was the heart and soul of Oak Hollow. But Oak Hollow held a secret, a legend whispered from one generation to the next, the story of Harlan Maddox, the gentle giant of Oak Hollow. Harlan Maddox was a man who could have stepped straight out of a storybook. He stood tall, a towering figure that dwarfed every other man in Oak Hollow. His hands, calloused and strong from years of toiling the land, were large enough to engulf a child's. His face, weathered by time and etched with the lines of a life lived outdoors, held a quiet strength that commanded respect without him ever uttering a word. But it was Harlan's eyes that truly captivated those who met him. They were the colour of a summer sky, clear and bright, reflecting a depth of kindness and gentleness that belied his imposing physique. Harlan lived alone in a small cabin on the outskirts of town, a modest dwelling surrounded by a garden that thrived under his care. He was a man of few words, content in his solitude and the rhythm of his daily routine. He spent his days tending to his garden, chopping wood and fishing by the river, a solitary figure at peace with himself and the world around him. Despite his imposing size, Harlan was known for his gentle nature and his willingness to lend a helping hand to anyone in need. He was a familiar sight in Oak Hollow, his booming laughter echoing through the streets as he helped a neighbour repair a fence, carried a heavy load for an elderly resident, or simply stopped to chat with the children playing in the park. Harlan might have been a giant of a man, but it was his heart, as big and as boundless as the sky above Oak Hollow, that truly set him apart. One summer evening, the peaceful tranquility of Oak Hollow was shattered by the fury of an unexpected storm. The wind howled like a banshee, tearing through the valley with a vengeance. The sky, once a clear azure, turned an ominous shade of black, as if the heavens themselves were about to unleash their wrath. Torrential rain lashed down, flooding the streets and turning the once placid river into a raging torrent. The storm raged for hours, and as darkness fell, the townsfolk huddled in their homes, their hearts filled with a mixture of fear and helplessness. Then came the deafening crack of thunder, followed by a blinding flash of lightning that illuminated the entire valley. The old barn on the outskirts of town, where the farmers stored their hay for the winter, was struck. Flames erupted, licking at the dry wood with a hunger that threatened to consume the entire structure. The townsfolk, their faces etched with worry, watched helplessly as the fire raged, knowing that if it spread, it could engulf the entire town. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the darkness, silhouetted against the inferno. It was Harlan. Without hesitation, he charged towards the burning barn, his massive frame moving with a speed that belied his size. He grabbed hold of one of the barn doors, its metal hinges already glowing red-hot from the heat of the blaze. With a mighty roar that echoed through the storm, Harlan ripped the door clean off its hinges, creating an opening for the trapped animals inside to escape. One by one, the terrified animals bolted out of the burning barn, their eyes wide with terror, their hooves pounding against the muddy ground. Harlan, his face blackened with soot, his clothes singed by the flames, stood guard, ensuring every last animal was safe. Section 4. Everyday Hero. Harlan's Acts of Kindness. The night of the storm cemented Harlan's place in the hearts of the townsfolk. He became a symbol of hope, a reminder that even in the face of adversity, courage and kindness could prevail. But Harlan remained unchanged. He continued to live his life with the same quiet dignity and humility that had always defined him. He would often be seen mending fences that had been blown down by the wind, his large hands working with a surprising deftness as he carefully hammered each nail into place. He helped rebuild the bridge that had been washed away by the swollen river, his immense strength proving invaluable as he moved heavy logs and boulders into place. When a pack of wild dogs threatened the livestock of a nearby farm, it was Harlan who faced them down, his booming voice and imposing figure enough to send them slinking back into the forest. He was a constant presence in the lives of the people of Oak Hollow, always there to lend a helping hand, always ready with a kind word or a reassuring smile. Children, drawn to his gentle nature, would often gather around him, eager to hear his stories of life in the wilderness, of encounters with wild animals, and of the changing seasons. He would sit with them for hours, his deep voice weaving tales that sparked their imaginations and filled their young hearts with wonder. To the people of Oak Hollow, Harlan was more than just a man. He was a guardian, a protector, a friend. He was the gentle giant of Oak Hollow, and his legend continued to grow with each passing day. Section 5. The Drought and Harlan's Sacrifice. The summer following the storm brought with it a new challenge for the people of Oak Hollow, a drought. The skies, once so generous with their rain, remained stubbornly clear. The sun beat down mercilessly, baking the earth until it cracked and turned to dust. The once lush fields withered and died, the crops failing, and the promise of a bountiful harvest turning to ashes. The river, once a source of life and joy for the townsfolk, slowed to a trickle, its once clear water reduced to a muddy sludge. Fear gripped the hearts of the people of Oak Hollow. The drought threatened their very livelihood, their ability to feed their families and to sustain their way of life. Harlan, ever vigilant, saw the despair creeping into the eyes of his friends and neighbors. He knew he had to act, had to find a way to help. High up in the mountains, beyond the reach of the drought, lay Crystal Lake, a hidden oasis fed by a spring that never ran dry. It was a treacherous journey, even for the most experienced climber, but Harlan was undeterred. He set off into the mountains, his heart heavy with the weight of his mission. He climbed for days, his resolve fueled by the thought of the parched land and the desperate faces of his people. Finally, he reached Crystal Lake, its surface shimmering like a sapphire in the sunlight. It was a sight that filled him with hope and renewed his determination.